Okay, it's a pleasure to be back, and nice to see everybody again. Welcome to the new faces and the new doctors. And there's a famous story that is told about a rabbi by the name of Yisrael Salanter. He lived probably about 200 plus years ago. And he was very well aware, he had his finger on the pulse of the world, and he saw that there were a lot of issues in the world, primarily amongst the Jewish people, and he felt that there were a lot of changes that had to be made, that we should become a better nation and improve ourselves. So he said over the following, he said, I thought, I'm going to go out, and he was a very powerful person, he was a genius, he was a massive, massive Torah scholar, he had oratory skills, he was well versed in all areas. And he said, I went out to change the world, and I realized it's just too big. You cannot change the world. He said, let me just focus in on my country. He lived in Lithuania, in Europe. Let me just focus in on my country. And then he started doing that. He said, no, too many people, too big, too vast, I can't. Let me just try my own little state that I live in. And he went to his state. He tried that. Too big, too many people, can't do it. He said, let me try my province, my neighborhood, my area over here. Much less people, much less demographics. Let me do that. He tried it. Didn't work. He said, you know what, I can't change the world. I can't change my country. I can't change my province. At least, let me change my family. Let me help them. He went into his house, starts working on his wife and the kids. After a short time, he said, it's not going to work either. You know what? There's only one person left in this world that I can change. And that's myself. And he spent the rest of his life working on changing himself and becoming the best Rav Yisrael Salanter that he was able to become. And ultimately he changed his family, and then his province, and then his country, and the entire world was changed as a result of this man. In every yeshiva across the world, there's something every day for about 20 to 30 minutes that is learned called Musar, which is self-correction and self-help, becoming a better person. Rabbi Salanter is the one who instituted the importance of this learning, that a person should constantly, every single day of their lives, work on themselves to become the best person that they could be. I think that as we are coming off the long day of Tisha B'Av, which was yesterday, the national day of our mourning, we mourn the destruction of the two temples in Jerusalem that were destroyed. We mourn all of the tragedies of the Jewish people, from the times of the destruction to the Inquisition to crusades and pogroms and Holocaust, and of course, most recently, October 7th. We mourned everything yesterday. And sadly, we woke up this morning and the world is exactly the same. And as you were showing me that yesterday was a shutdown of the 405 because some Jews felt that it was a wise idea to proclaim our allegiance to the Jewish cause and shut down the freeway so that we could show that we're not genocidal and that we don't believe in these things and we want the world to be a better place. But at the end of the day, I think that we all woke up this morning and realized the world is the same that it was yesterday. And the anti-Semitism, maybe because of the 405, is going to be even climbing today in Los Angeles. Who knows? And whatever is going to happen in Khan Yunis and is going to happen in Gaza and whatever Iran is planning, it's going to continue. So that's not going to change. It's going to run its course. It's going to be how it is. The only thing that we could actually do is change ourselves. That's the only person that we are in control of. The only person that we can measure the success rate, the only person that we could examine honestly is ourselves. And therefore, a person has an obligation every single day of their lives. Like you're doctors, so you're always examining the patients. You're always trying to figure out what's wrong with them and what do they need and how can I make their life better. And the more sophisticated you are as a doctor, and the more sophisticated the medical technology gets over the years, the deeper you can examine and look inside the patient, in their veins, in their blood, in their heart, in their brain. You can go into the deepest cortex of the brain to understand what's all of that activity that's going on. So you spend your time so much looking into others, but at the end of the day, you don't have to bring home all those machines, and you don't need to hook up to an EKG, and you don't need an MRI or a brain scan or a CAT scan. Everybody has all of the tools that Hashem has equipped us with to be able to examine ourselves and see deeper into our own minds, our own hearts, our own souls, and figure out what it is that we need to work on as an individual. And through that, you then begin to expand that to a spouse, to children, to your neighborhood, to your congregations, to your communities, and eventually we hope it will have an impact on the entire world and the universe. And perhaps one of the areas that we always speak about during this time of the year, which is a very important thing, not just for this time of the year, but for the entirety of our lives. It says that one of the reasons that the Holy Temple in Jerusalem was destroyed was because the Jewish people were having a problem amongst themselves. And that was something called Sinat Chinam. There was senseless hatred, one Jew for another. They were not able to accept the differences of their family, of their neighbors, of their communal members. They weren't able to appreciate that everybody comes from a different place in this world. They grew up differently, they were raised differently, they think differently, they talk differently, they look at the world differently. They could not understand that. And when they came in contact with someone that was different, either obviously different or through the course of conversation, it was clear that there were differences, they were not very good at accepting the differences of the person that was standing in front of them. And when you can't accept the differences, so it usually broods and breeds inside of the person feelings of frustration and agitation, and eventually leads to anger, and that very often will lead to sina, to coming to hate the person that is in front of you, and they did nothing wrong. It's like a husband and a wife, they get married, and in the wife says, I remember when I first got married, when my wife did laundry for the first time, she folded my socks in the wrong way. What does that mean? In my house growing up, my mother always folded the socks into a ball. That's how it worked. You fold them up into a ball and you open up your drawer and there's balls of socks. That's how it works. My wife folded the socks the first week and she folded over the tops and then laid them out in the drawer. I told my wife, you don't know how to fold socks. That's not the way that you fold socks. She said, no. That is the way you fold socks. How do you fold socks? I said, you fold them into a ball. She said, no, that's not the way that you fold socks. And we had a conversation and we realized in my house, socks were rolled up into a ball, and in her house, you fold over the top and you lay them down nicely in the drawer. I'm not right, and she's not right. I'm not wrong, and she's not wrong. We came from different homes, and we folded socks in different ways, and we had different expectations, but we're both right. And believe me now, after so many years, I like the way she folds the socks. Not a problem at all. I don't know if I'd be able to handle a socks in a ball anymore. I'm sorry to my mother, but I wouldn't be able to handle that anymore. That's just a small example. But the way that we think is different. The way that we deal with situations are different. The emotional, physiological, biological, spiritual state of every person is totally different. And therefore, we're always going to see things in a different way than the person that is sitting or standing in front of us. And if you learn how to accept and understand and be sensitive to the sensitivities of another person, then your heart will have room to be inclusive of everyone. If not, so then the heart narrows, and instead of embracing and accepting and loving, sometimes it can even be a spouse or a child, it ends up brewing inside what we call sinas chinam, senseless and baseless hatred, because you're not really basing it on anything. You're basing it on the fact that you disagree with that person, how you think about this, how you deal with this, how you respond to this, that's senseless, because you're not acknowledging there's another person across the table from you. And so we're always taught during this time of the year that since that the temple in Jerusalem was destroyed because of this, our job is to try to fix that up as much as we can. So once that we begin to have patience, and we're humble and we have humility with others, and we can have an open mind to understand that people are coming from a different perspective in a different place, then we can begin to let the other person's differences not be threatening to us and bothersome. Rather, we can begin to appreciate what they do. There's a very interesting holiday that's coming up on Sunday night and Monday. It's called Tu B'Av. It's the 15th day in the month of Av. And the Gemara says, what was so unique about this very special day? And the Gemara explains to us that that was the one day of the year that even though that for the entire year, all of the 12 tribes of the Jewish people only married within their tribe, there was a lot of tribal ancestry that took place, and whichever tribe you were in, you always married within, and there's many reasons why that would be. You usually do much better when you're marrying someone that has a very similar background to you. You understand each other, you understand the family. Shiraz and Tehran, they don't go together, right? Sometimes there's a miracle that takes place. But that's one of the reasons. It's very different places. Different, even though that it's coming from the same country, but different cultures and different outlook and different perspective and so on and so forth. So there's differences. If you're in the same tribe, you grew up in the same community, the same neighborhood, and your parents are coming from the same place. So there's a lot of similarity, and therefore marry a person from your tribe. One day a year, they allowed for the tribes to intermarry with each other. That meant that the tribe of Dan could marry into the tribe of Asher, and from the tribe of Levi they can marry into the tribe of Yehuda, and so on and so forth. And that was a great day of joy for the Jewish people. Why was it a great day of joy? If really it's so good to be to yourself? Because every tribe had wonderful differences, one from the other. Every tribe had certain strengths that they exemplified, whether in their character, whether in the way that they lived, whether the way they took care of each other. Every tribe had strengths that another tribe didn't have. And one day a year, on Tu B'Av, they would say, you know what? Let's let those strengths join each other, one tribe from the other, and create a union that is going to be so powerful, it's going to make even a greater family, even a greater nation, a greater sense of offspring and the future of the Jewish people. And that day was so festive and so joyous that we say, Ein Yomim Tovim L'Yisrael, there's no greater holidays for the Jewish people than that day that the Jewish people, with their differences, can come together and create something that is new and fresh and strong and powerful. And that's the message of these weeks and these days and these months and really our whole lifetime. That we are supposed to be people that appreciate the differences of another person. Some of you are cardiologists, some of you are pulmonologists, some of you, I don't know the other doctors, pain management, but everybody has a different job. And if you would run into the operating room on a heart, when your job is to work and do surgery on brains, we would throw you out of the operating because that's not your position. And if you would run into the brain surgery and you are the one who does all of the knee surgeries and you would start to go into the brain, we would say, you're going to kill this person, get out of here. Everybody has their position, but if everybody appreciates each other, then everybody works together as one, and you give over the greatest amount of healing and the greatest amount of productivity and the greatest amount of success to yourself and the people that are around you. Marriage are two people coming together, trying to come together as one, even though there's 1,000 differences between the two of you. But as you begin to accept and understand and embrace, it becomes that much more beautiful. We have children. As much as we would like that our children are going to be the mirror image of who we are, I don't know how old your children are, but if you have teenagers, you know already, it ain't happening. Our children are going to go on their own course in life. They're going to become their own people in life. They're going to have their own wants and their own desires and their own dreams and their own goals and their own foolishness, just like we had when we were teenagers. And they might disappoint you and let you down and upset you and aggravate you. But a good parent is one that accepts their children for who they are, helps as much as we can to guide them along a proper path, but at the end of the day recognize they're an individual, just like I'm an individual, just like I make choices, they make choices, and I will embrace them and I will love them no matter what it is that they are doing. And so on and so forth with every person that we come in contact with. And if we do that, especially amongst the Jewish people, when there's always this pushback and this division that exists, if we are able to understand and appreciate and see the good in everyone, so then a lot of the anger and the frustration and the pushing away leaves our nation, and a lot of the embracing and the coming close will become part of our nation. And that's a person who's able to humble themselves and able to recognize that everyone you come in contact with is coming from a different place. You're not right, and they're not right. You're not wrong, and they're not wrong. Everybody has their perspective, and we have to learn how to be able to coexist and live together in a healthy, normal, loving, accepting way. There's a very beautiful story that I just want to leave off with about one of the greatest sages of the last generation. His name was Moshe Feinstein. He passed away in, I believe, 83, I want to say 1983 possibly. He lived till the ripe old age, 90-something. He was a giant of the Jewish people, although he was about only 4'11". Physically, he was small. Spiritually, he was from the giants of our nation. And he was known not only to be a giant in wisdom and a giant in scholarship and tutelage, but he was a giant and a genius in how to deal with people as well. His sensitivity, his understanding, his approach to every single person. There are thousands of stories, legendary, the way that he was so sensitive and so gentle with another person. And the story is told that there was once two brothers that made the trek to visit Rabbi Moshe Feinstein in New York. Their mother was dying in the hospital. And there are many, what we call halachic questions, there are many Jewish law questions that come into play when you're dealing with the end of life. It's not so simple to pull a plug. It's not so simple to even do, there is questions about DNR, not DNR. There are many, many questions, surgeries that are going to be invasive and things that are going to be more easy to handle. There are many, and decisions that every step of the way, a calculated and a educated and a wise rabbi who's holding in all of these laws is able to guide people through. So these two young men, let's say they were about 18, 19, 20 years old. They came to Rav Moshe Feinstein. It's towards the end of his life. He's maybe into his 90s already. He's sitting in a room and he's learning. And these two boys walk in and they ask him a very delicate, sensitive question about their mother and the end of life, exactly how to handle a certain situation. And he looks at them and he answers their question immediately. He was able to answer such questions right off the bat, usually. And they said, "Thank you, Rabbi, thank you." And they were about to leave, and he said, "Excuse me, I don't mean to pry." He said, "But this is a question about your mother's life and the decisions that have to be made. Usually the husband is the one that's in charge of those major decisions. If you don't mind me asking, why did you come and not your father? And so the boys look down to the ground and they say, because our father passed away about a year ago. And we're still actually in the year of mourning for our father. And we're the ones that are taking care of our mother. In that moment, this old man who never met these two boys before, he breaks out and he starts crying. And then they start crying. And you can imagine the picture in the room, the old rabbi with the two boys that he never met, and all three of them sitting there crying together. And then he collects himself and he looks at them and he says, are you married? And they said, no, neither of us are married yet. He said, which one of you is older? And the boy said, I am. So Moshe takes the hands of that boy into his hands and he begins blessing him profusely that he should find the right bride, find the right match, build a beautiful house, a house that is going to be a legacy for both his father and for his mother, and that Hashem should bless him and should shower him with all of the greatest things and success and blessing and health, and he and his wife should live together to a ripe old age. And then he turned to the other son, the other brother, and he took his hand in his hands and he blessed them also with only success and goodness and blessings, and at the right time, a good wife and a family and children, and live to a ripe old age in peace and in harmony and in health. And these boys then bid their farewell. And Rav Moshe Feinstein taught them the lesson of life. That if you could understand how fast he was able to understand what pain these boys must be in, how difficult it must be, how hard it must be to be orphans from your father and now realizing you're going to be an orphan from your mother and having to come and ask such a question. And in an instant he understood it all, that he began to cry together with them. Then you will be able to understand your spouse, your children, the doctor in the operating room who just doesn't seem to have his head in it today, the patient who is driving you absolutely crazy. I don't know in KAISER if they have such patients. Not after they waited 3 hours just to be able to see you for their 15-minute slot. I'm sure they will never drive you crazy. But you're lucky they probably don't have your cell phone numbers and they don't know how to find you. And when they call, they just go straight to voicemail. But there are such doctors that, their patients know their cell phone and they know how to call the office and they can get in touch with them and they could drive doctors crazy. And you have to smile. And you have to understand why they call you. They're anxious about their health. They're afraid they're going to die. They don't know if they're ever going to get better. They Googled the disease that they have one too many times. And the first time they Googled it, it said, you can live for the next 15 years. Then they Googled it, no, massive change. You have 3 months left to go. Then they Googled it again, 3 months, but maybe it'll last for 10 years. They're panicking beyond belief. And they're calling you just to hear a voice of calmness, to hear a voice of confidence. Everything's going to be okay. So with Hashem's help, we learn from the lessons of Rav Yisrael Salanter. You can't change the world, not all at once anyway, but we could change ourselves. And if we work on those small changes, and maybe one area that we can all work on is just understanding another person better than we did before, that creates peace and harmony amongst ourselves and our family and people around us. And it ends up adding more shalom, much more peace to the world. And then the peace that the Jewish people are desiring from all the enemies that are around us all the time. And this tremendous rise of anti-Semitism in the world everywhere that you go. Once that there's peace inside and peace amongst us, then Hashem can make peace in the world. And we'll have the ultimate peace that we are striving for. and that is with the building of the third Beit HaMikdash, the coming of Mashiach speedily and in our days. Amen. Thank you. You're welcome. Any questions? I have some medical questions, by the way.
I think your wife was right, by the way, the song.
Yeah, she is.
I told him, I like the ball. I was like, yeah, good stuff. Especially I was kid socks.
Then you talked about the marriage, a joke came to my mind.
Yes.
But of course, no offense. Anyway, said that when you get married, your religion is complete. When you are single, you live in heaven. When you get married, you realize the meaning of the hell. So, but that was a joke. But no, I agree to the marriage is complete. Type of.
May I share a story?
Sure.